Hey everybody, Dr. Sanderson here. Welcome to Module 4. It's hard to believe, but we are halfway through the course after we complete this module. So we're making really good progress, and I'm really excited about our topic for this module, which is digital identity. And I'm sure that's something that several of you have mentioned at different points in the course to this point. But technology, really gives us the opportunity to display certain identities that don't necessarily align with the identity we might have offline. One really good example of that that some of you may be familiar with is the MTV show Catfishing, which is all about people who meet other people online and then come to find out it's not the person they thought they were interacting with. And I think there's a couple of different interesting ways of looking at digital identity with that. In that one, through technology we can exaggerate or mislead or maybe misconstrue some things about ourselves. But then I think the other thing that's really interesting if you watch the show is that people are stealing like Instagram profile pictures or pictures of other people online and using that as their to basically say this is what I look like. And so I think that whole kind of ownership thing gets really murky because, when we do put something out on Instagram or even Facebook, there's really nothing stopping somebody from taking that picture and using it, which, can be definitely very problematic, but can, raise some really interesting privacy concerns as well, too. So, think about also just how the stealing of other people's content relates back to digital identity as well. So in Module 4, what you have is a video blog post about digital identity. And what I wanted to do is just give a brief kind of rundown of what's expected in that video based on the rubric. So one of the first things you're going to ask is, how is your digital identity different from your real world identity? And for some of you, there may be no difference. You might be the same person online that you are offline. And if that's the case, just say that and maybe, give some examples of that. So for instance, maybe offline you are really into sports and so online you talk about sports a lot as well. Maybe you use your real profile picture online and then that's really who you are. So for others of you though, you maybe do things a little different. So for instance, offline you may be more introverted, whereas online you might be more extroverted. And so, really that's just about you and how you feel you are similar or different offline versus online. The second thing is then, how does technology, enable you to express a specific portion or element of your identity, and how does technology influence, govern, or shape identity? So one thing that comes to mind there is people with disabilities. So for instance, maybe somebody is able to communicate in ways online and express themselves online in ways that they can't do offline due to having a disability. For me, I tend to really on my social media, I'm kind of involved in sports a lot, social media strategy and things a lot, and then pop culture. So technology has enabled me to use those interests and connect with other people who then have those interests as well. And then for the second part of that, I think just go back to the catfishing example. Technology allows us to manipulate and basically take on any identity we want. So we get into a message board, we get into a massive online player game. We can become somebody entirely different. So I think in some ways that can be empowering. But in other ways, it might also be setting us up for problems down the road and, leads to all sorts of trust and authenticity issues as well. The next one is, how is your online identity like a performance? So if you think about the ways that, people behave online, in many ways it could be linked back to a performance. So again, you might not do that. You might be the same person that you are offline, and if you are, just say that. But people might do certain things to get reactions from other people online. So one thing I see a lot is somebody will put on, say, Facebook, I'm having a really bad day, ... And within minutes, they'll get 50 or 60 comments of people telling them how great they are and how much they love them and all that. So I think that's kind of an example of a performance. Again, if you're somebody who's more introverted offline, you may come online and be someone totally different and almost like you're taking on a role. So just think about how different or similar you are offline and online, and how that might be like a performance. So you're kind of relating the first element there with that fourth element, item point D in the rubric. And then the next one is, how is your behavior different when you know it's public? So I think for most of us, when we know we're being watched, we behave differently than we might otherwise. And again, you might not. You might be the same no matter who's watching you. But if you think about the way some people behave online, I think it's fair to say that they would never behave that way in the workplace or at a school or at a church. So, I think sometimes when we get online and we start manipulating identity, we forget that people are watching, even though they are, and we tend to kind of lose that filter of other people watching us. So, just think about how your identity might be different or your behavior might be different when you actually know people are watching you. And again, it may not be different at all. And then the last one is, how does your digital identity affect your sense of person? And again, for some of you, it may not affect it at all. You might not you might have lots of fulfillment in your interpersonal relationships separate from anything that's online, and that's fine. At the same time, there might be people who get a lot of satisfaction about the roles that they play in like certain discussion forums or message boards or gaming communities. So there might be people who actually derive a lot of self-esteem, community from being online that makes them feel better about themselves. So again, that's an individual thing. In what ways, if at all, does digital identity affect your sense of person? So I hope that gives you kind of a better sense of what that video blog post is looking for. I think this is a great topic. I'll put up some resources in an announcement that you can check out in addition to the resources that are already provided. And then one last thing, and I will also put this up in an announcement, is that we are heading into the winter break here. So from December 24th to January 1st, we're off. There's no expectation of participating. So Module 4 runs it's actually 5 days, sorry. It's December 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and then January 2nd and January 3rd. So bottom line, your video blog post needs to be submitted by January 3rd at 11:59 Eastern. I will be available by email every day, probably with the exception of Christmas Day. So definitely feel free to get a hold of me if you have questions or concerns. And I hope you all have a very wonderful holiday season and enjoy this time of year, being with your family and friends and loved ones. And I'll talk to you down the road. Thanks a lot.